All right, thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know that we have heavy weather expected to roll in somewhere around 7:30 or 8, so that's your cue that we need to be out of here by 7, right? I like this class. I would like to thank everybody for coming this evening. We do have 3 candidates here who are running for city office. We have Rodney McGilvery. Rodney, if you'd stand or wave or something. Rodney is running for councilman in Ward 4. Next to him we have Terry Shelton. Terry is running for councilman in Ward 5. And we have Keith Anderson right here, and Keith is running in Ward 1, which is East Biloxi. At this time, I don't see Mike Leonard anywhere, and I don't see the mayor anywhere. Somebody coming in? There he is. But that being said, we'll dispense with the opening comments and move to community development with Mr. Jerry Creel. Did you get a copy of the agenda when you came in? And you don't have to sign in, but I always like to know who attended. So if you haven't signed in, I'd appreciate it if you would before you leave. Thank you, Mr. Creel.
Okay. I have a couple of topics to cover tonight, and the first one has to do with the status of the proposed road for the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. As you know, they want to have a direct connect that comes from the college down and ties in with Pass Road, somewhere in there by Mississippi Music. After several initial meetings with the group, I don't think we've had a meeting with them in over 2 years. They came in and met with us and talked about the possibility of the road going in. We made them aware, that they would have to go through the process just like any other developer. They told us that they would get with us when they got ready to move forward with the project. We talked to them about the neighbors' concerns, and they said, well, we'll be happy to have a meeting with the neighbors to talk to them and explain to them about what's going on. The city's involvement in that would be that if they're building this road and their intention is to dedicate the road to the city, then they would have to build it to city standards, and they'd have to go before the city council and ask that the road be accepted by the city. Also, we'd have to review it during the review process to make sure that it's not going to interfere with any existing utility lines or anything like that. So the short answer to the proposed road is that nothing has been submitted to us. We don't have any drawings, we don't have any application or anything else. So until we get that in our hand, it's not going to move forward. At the last meeting when this came up, I told you that I thought that probably what they were trying to do was to finish up the sign that they were installing over on Highway 49 for the university campus over there. I noticed the sign is installed. It looks like they're still doing some landscaping over there. But as soon as they present something to us, we'll notify Dr. Tisdale, and he can send it out in the e-blast, and we'll make sure that everyone is informed. The second topic is the short-term rental complex status on Briarfield. This is Mr. Zhang's property, and if you'll recall, when Mr. Zhang came to us initially to build the apartment complex over on the west side of Briarfield, the property is zoned RM30, which does allow apartments to go there. He had asked us about being able to utilize those apartments for short-term rental. Well, when the short-term rental issue kicked in, that means that he would have to come to us for a conditional use. He came to the Planning Commission with an application for conditional use to do short-term rental. They approved it. It went to the City Council. The City Council felt that the property, if it was going to be used for a commercial use, then it needed to be zoned commercial. So Mr. Zhang went back and reapplied to go through the process to have the property rezoned to CB, community business, which would allow short-term rental as a use by right. It was approved by the Planning Commission. It was on the agenda to go before the council, and the developer sent us a letter requesting that it be removed. So it was removed at his request off of the agenda to be supposedly to be submitted at a later date. We've heard nothing else from him. He hasn't come back to us. He hasn't let us know what his intent is. And so right now we're essentially waiting on him to come back. And when it comes back, it'll be made public that it's coming back on there. So right now, I don't have an answer on the first one, and I don't have an answer on the second one because it's basically in the hands of the developers for both cases. And that's all I have, so thank you.
Any other
Dr.
questions for
Tisdale.
Mr. Creel? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Creel, next on the agenda, Sherry Bell is not with us, but Jamie Lee, one of her assistants, is with us. We have two items on the agenda: Pennzoil Park, which is at the north end of Churchill Avenue and bounded on the north by Old Bay Road. And then is there anybody here from Edgewater Park? Okay, that's what the lighted oak tree is about. But Jamie, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Just to give you an update on the Pennzoil Park, the sign, of course, will hopefully be replaced in July. And looking at the playground equipment out there, the cost is varying anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 to get that replaced. And right now, we're exploring opportunities for grants. But if anyone knows any businesses who may be interested in helping out with that, they can contact Director Bell or Councilman Tisdale, please. So looking at the next thing, which is the lighting the live oak tree, it's costing around $2,500, and the work will be done midsummer. The Edgewater signage, will be doing our site inspection with FEMA very soon, and hopefully it will be replaced in a couple of months. We're just waiting on a picture of the original sign, and then we can get with FEMA and go that route for those things. A couple things we have going on as well. As you can see, at this facility, our partition doors back there, they're in a little rough shape, and they are actually in the process of being fabricated right now. So hopefully, we think in the next couple months, all of those doors will be replaced with newer models, a lot easier to operate. Those kind of get stuck different times, and the ones upstairs in the meeting rooms will also be very new. Also, something that we do with our Parks and Rec department is help sponsor the Mississippi Senior Olympics. And we are going forward with that this year. Last year, we had to cancel it because of COVID, of course. But we've got some protocols in place that we are going to go forward with that, and registration is now opened. It opened up a couple weeks ago, so anybody who's 50 and over who's looking for any activity or events, please sign up and come join us. We're expecting over 600 athletes through the various sports. I mean, there's swimming, bocce, darts, cornhole, shuffleboard, basketball, pickleball. So yeah, absolutely. So you know, you can go online, and all you have to do is go on a search engine, Google, Yahoo or something, and just Google Mississippi Senior Olympics, and the website will pop up, and feel free to look around, and all the contact information is on there if you're interested, and it's very affordable. I think it's $20, and it allows you to play unlimited events. Other than, I believe, golf, there's a little bit more fee. But just check that out if you'd like. And that is all I have, Councilman.
Any other questions for Mr. Lee? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Well, I tell you, our agenda is rapidly shortening. Mr. Leonard's not here for an engineering update, and these items we've skipped so far, hopefully Mr. Leonard will show up. But if he doesn't, I'll go back and let you know what I know on each of these items. Public Works, Billy Ray Allen is not here tonight. They have one grandchild who is in some event tonight, and if you're a grandparent, that's what you do. But I put this on the agenda because in going door to door and speaking with folks, I was out in Edgewater Estates, and it was mentioned by one or two residents that they had had several water line breaks. out there in Edgewater Estates. And in checking with Mr. Allen, he said that the infrastructure, particularly water lines, use an asbestos product called, well, I want to say it was transite. And as it ages, as it gets very old, it gets very, very brittle. And sometimes it's enough just for a heavy truck to roll down the road, one day too many, and the transite fractures, and then you've got a water leak. So there have been several in Edgewater Estates. Edgewater Estates, I think their houses were probably first built out there late 50s, maybe 60s. So that's how old the original water lines are. Now, Bay Vista is probably built a little earlier out there, and Tanglewood. So as Biloxi expanded west, that was the product of choice at that time, and all of that infrastructure is aging. So if it was put in sometime in the 60s, it's about 60 years old, almost 60 years old. And I was speaking with Mr. Leonard about that. They've replaced the water lines in Tanglewood. I don't know that they've replaced all of them, but they've replaced some of them. But in speaking with him, the plan is to move to the west. When you do something like that, it's not just water lines. You need to be doing sewage lines while you're there, playing in the dirt. And then if there's any drainage lines, they need to be replaced. So you're talking high dollar. But that's what that item refers to. So we do have aging infrastructure in West Biloxi. East Biloxi, in another 3 years, they'll have all new infrastructure at that end of town. There's a lot of work going on in Wool Market. For a number of years, there was no work done in Wool Market. So the city's playing catch up there in Wool Market. But I don't want them to forget about West Biloxi, because these water line breaks are going to become more frequent due to the material that was used so many years ago. All right, next on the agenda is Chief Boney. Usually we have nothing about the fire department and we have nothing specific, but when that happens, I tell Chief Boney, you don't have to show up if you don't want to. So if you come to all these meetings, you probably hadn't seen him in 2.5 years. I said, you got to show up. Yes. Yes. All I know is, we've had.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The question is, do we have an update on the drainage ditch between between the Enclave and Petty Boy subdivision? And the city engineer for a number of years was Christy Labata, and she has taken a job with the Jackson County School District and left the city at the end of December. So I know that Mr. Leonard has been kind of overseeing the engineering department, and before she left, Mr. Leonard and engineer Labata actually walked the length of that drainage ditch to see the erosion and see other issues that were apparent. Additionally, I know because Mr. Leonard said, they've got some fences down. This was after Hurricane Zeta. And, the city can't get in and do anything until those fences are up, so I put that in a blast, and I think many of those fences have been put up. So I don't know what the next step is at this point. That's why I was hoping Mr. Leonard, that's why I scheduled him on the agenda, that he's in the know. He could tell you what's going to happen or what possible solutions there may be. I don't know if there's still a lot of foot traffic. I don't know that the gates at each end, they're secured. I know at the end where you are on the east end, it's secure. On the west end. On the east end, as far as I know, that end is still secure. But there used to be a lot of foot traffic and on occasion some burglaries, I think, in that area. But that's all I have at this time. All right, Chief Boney. Pops Ferry Extension. The city has acquired, as I understand it, all the right-of-way, except I think there's one property owner who has 2 parcels, and they're maybe going to court eminent domain, I think. That being said, we're still lacking state or federal funding for that road. I think it's to the tune of $8 million. The money that we have to have towards that project, my understanding is, it's there, we're waiting. We just have to get a federal grant, or I think it's a federal grant, I don't think it's a state grant, of about $8 million, then they can begin the project. That's going to run from Pass Road and Pops Ferry. It's going to come down over the railroad tracks, head back to the east just a little bit, and going to come out just to the east where Oakmont Place meets the intersection there at Highway 90. So that's the latest that I have on that. Anything else while we're off topic? The Sanger Theater. I know that it is. It's on the list. They're working on the exterior. They've got to seal the exterior. They've replaced the roof. They've replaced, I think they've completed all the air conditioning and heating. And I think that is still on schedule, as I understand it, to be completed about Christmas, before the end of the year. It's nice. It'll be real nice on the outside. Then we've got to redo the inside. So there's an additional cost there. We've been able to get, I think, $2 million worth of grants. And I think right now, with what they are scheduled to do when it's completed, maybe the city has $1.5 million in it, I'm guessing, give or take. Don't know what it'll take to do the interior. It wouldn't surprise me if it's $1 million, but that's just a guess. What's $1 million among friends?
It's less than $1 billion.
But it is a gorgeous building. Let's see, covered that. So while we're still off topic, let me go back to the very first item on DeBees Road. And here's the latest. When all was said and done, the city passed a resolution that said the city will pave DeBees. And the city of Gulfport said, we'll reimburse you a third of that cost. And the county said, we'll reimburse you a third of that cost. Then the county said, we want to oversee the project and let the cities reimburse us. So we rescinded the previous resolution, we approved the new resolution. As long as it gets resurfaced, it doesn't make any difference to me. Then I checked, so all of that was done maybe in, let's say maybe January. All that was kind of straightened out. So I went to see Supervisor Rocco and said, do you have a timeline? I'd like to let folks know, because people in Channel Mark and Cove Drive, they travel, it's a heavily traveled road. And she said, well, we've gotten a resolution from Biloxi, but we've never gotten a resolution from Gulfport. I said, well, I'm glad I asked you what the timeline was. So I gave the mayor a heads up, and he spoke with Gulfport, and Gulfport got the resolution over to them. My understanding is they have a supervisors meeting on Tuesday of next week, March 23rd, and it's to be on the agenda, is what I've been told. Now, I noticed that I was out the other day driving to Bees. By CTA, they were marking up the road, but I don't know, that could be for anything. I'm hoping it's to mark some things so that they are going to come through soon and, work with Warren Paving is usually who does the work. And you have to, get on their schedule and so forth. So with a little luck, if they're marking everything that needs to be marked, then they'll come out, mill the top 2 inches, I think, come through and pave the last 2 inches. Now, they're not doing major road work on the road bed or anything. They're just resurfacing that. Not to my knowledge. They're just resurfacing. Yeah, and in speaking with Supervisor Rocco when we started all of this, her understanding is that there are a number of utilities, significant number of utilities under the road bed. So if you go in and if you want to widen it, first you've got to acquire the property. And if you look at the sidewalk in front of CTA, their section of sidewalk is probably enough for a third or fourth, another lane or two. And their understanding was, and they built that sidewalk, I don't know how long ago it was, might have been 10 or 12 years ago. They understood the road was going to be widened. Well, the road has never been widened. And to my knowledge, that's not in the plans.
But from Runnymede to
That I don't know, and the reason I say I don't know, you've got to work with the community college, and the community college, I've tried to keep them informed of what's going on. I mean, I send them the same e-blast that I send everybody here. And they own the property on either side, so that property would have to be acquired. They are supported by the county. It may be that the county can direct them to do that. I don't know that they can. I think the community college is going to have to be willing to share or give up to widen the right-of-way for a wider road there. They may or may not be willing to do that. That's where we are. That's the latest.
That's not what I'm
Well, I don't know who you've been speaking with. That's my understanding. And maybe you have a better understanding than I do, but that's the latest that I've heard. The cost to remill and resurface that is going to be, I think, $82,000. So the city's portion of that is going to be $26,000 to $28,000. About $80,000 to $82,000. So all they're doing is, you can't widen or reconstruct a road for that little money. So just right now, it just has to be resurfaced. Now, if you're talking about the private road that Mr. Creel mentioned earlier, I don't think you were you, Terry? Or? No. All that's happening on DeBees is to resurface it. That's what that cost is for. That's the only thing that's been contracted and agreed to with the cities and the county. All right. Chief Boney, you still here? Okay. Let me tell you, good guy, knows his stuff. He's excellent. It's all yours.
Thank you, Councilman Tisdale, and I'll try and be brief about it, but I haven't in the past year been able to talk about the fire department, and it is my passion. The fire department is my passion. So you just give me a few minutes, I'll give you a few statistics, and then I'll drill down to specifically Ward 5 and the fire department. Couple of quick facts about the fire department and our call load over the past year for Ward 5. Biloxi Fire Department responded to a total of 7,026 calls in 2020. Of that total, 1,719 were made by Station 5 right across the street. Out of that number, 78 were fires, 1,108 were medical calls. As you can see, Station 5 is a busy little station. Because of the high volume of calls in Ward 5, the department was forced to add another apparatus in 2017 to keep that up with that demand. While we can all agree 2020 was a challenging year for everyone, the Biloxi Fire Department was no different. The major problems we were faced with were Hurricane Zeta, but bigger than that was how to address the pandemic. The department had to quickly adapt our response capabilities to include impacts from the virus on our members as well as the public. In March of last year, we were hit with COVID-related absences. At one point, we had 22 firefighters out for COVID-related issues. To put that into perspective, it takes 20 firefighters to man 5 stations. We have 10 in the city of Biloxi. We quickly realized that there would be no way we could sustain this kind of impact for very long. So with mountains of information from the CDC, the State Department of Health, and local officials, for 6 days last March, my staff spent countless hours devising an operations model that we're comfortable with. Even with this model, it was 4 weeks into the pandemic before we were finally able to see some positive results. I'm proud to say we have used this operational model for about a year now, and it has allowed us to continue to provide an uninterrupted response capability. The model did reveal some issues that have affected the department, but nothing we couldn't overcome. One issue was Station 5. We found that this station, due to its age and size, could not create an environment where our social distancing could not be achieved. We were forced to shut one of the 2 engines down at that station for the remainder of the year in order to achieve the level of protection for our firefighters to keep the station operating. Due to the department's earlier than expected access to the vaccines, however, as of March 1st, we were able to place that second engine at Station 5 back in service. With the help of Mayor Gillich and the administration, we are currently in the primary stages of a design change for Station 5 so that it will be better able to serve not only our firefighters that are stationed there, but also the community at large. The department is still in somewhat of a state that firefighters like to refer to as a lockdown, meaning the public is still not able to freely access our stations and members. However, as of March 1st, we have also reinstated fire inspections for commercial businesses as well as our annual fire hydrant inspections. As the vaccines take hold in the coming months, we hope to open the stations back up to the public as well as start our fire education programs back up. But right now, we're focusing on what we can do that is in the best interest and safety of the public. At Station 5, you will notice a new pumper, one of two purchased by the city this past year. We're very proud of this truck, and it is my hope that you will see more of the same in the coming years, as these trucks were designed by Biloxi firefighters and built specifically for the needs of Biloxi. They are more compact and a full 3 feet shorter than our other trucks. This allows them to be more maneuverable and reduces the maintenance costs. The interior of these trucks are designed and built to better protect and eliminate cancer-causing carcinogens to remain in the cabs, thus reducing firefighter exposure to these deadly pathogens. I expect it will take the rest of the year before we start to see our operations recover from the pandemic, but be assured, we will continue to do everything in our power to be there if and when you need us. Thank you. Huh?
Hey, about that.
Yeah?
Talk about what that is.
What?
Class 2.
Huh?
Class 2.
Oh yeah, well that was a big surprise for us. We achieved a Class 2 fire rating last year as well. And while it doesn't really affect much on the homeowner side of the insurance equation, it does go a long way for the commercial businesses in Biloxi. And we are only one of 2 cities in the state of Mississippi that have achieved that goal. So we're working hard.
Chief, don't come back until you achieve a rating of 1. Thank you, Chief. Did anybody have any questions of Chief Boney?
Jack's doing good. I would have brought him tonight, but he would have interrupted everything.
Jack is the fire dog. He's the Dalmatian. How old is he?
2 years old.
2 years old. Okay. He's in the terrible 2s right now. That's why I didn't bring him. Next on our agenda, Chief John Miller is at a conference this week, but Major Chris DeBack is here, and there are several items here on the agenda that always come up at this time of the year. So, Major, thanks for coming.
How's everybody doing this evening? Director Miller sends his apologies. He had a school that he attended. He's actually on his way back right now. As far as Ward 5 goes, in the last 90 days, we've responded to 1,523 calls. There were 415 incident reports taken for a total of 562 various offenses. The majority of the offenses that were taken were things like credit card fraud, shoplifting, and stolen property. Certainly with a lot of the retail outlets, that's where a lot of that's coming from. There were 11 burglaries reported in this ward, and all of the calls that came to Ward 5 in the last 90 days encompassed about 19% of the total calls throughout the whole city. As far as the concerns with the homeless, we continue to have our homeless outreach team, if you will. We have some that work on days off, come in to assist, as well as a permanent person that works with different places like the Open Doors Homeless Coalition, trying to get housing. Last year's point in time count, which means they go out and usually it's a day or two, they go out and how many they contact, that's the point in time that they come across, and they try to contact everybody through the soup kitchens and various other methods. It was around 160. This January, we were around 60. So they're making progress. Their goal is to house at least 7 people every week. And through COVID, of course, some of that slowed down, but they're back on track, and every week they're housing more and more. Sometimes that housing is here in the city, sometimes it's in other cities, and sometimes it's out in the county. And then others we're able to reconnect them with their family and get them back home. As far as spring break and the traffic plan, I know that's probably the biggest concern of everybody. I'm going to bring up Captain Dykes, who's our event coordinator, and he's going to have the latest and greatest information. But as he's making his way, you may have heard the rumors about the possibility of 2 spring breaks. We do have 2 factions, basically, one that's trying to make a plan in April and the other that's trying to make a plan in August. We're going to remain fluid. As Captain Dykes is going to tell you, we don't have a great count number on any of these events, and we're trying to set our plans, make sure we're fluid and can adapt and respond to anything needed.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Councilman. The input I have for spring break is that what we're looking at, it's hard for us to get our hands around a number because of the 2 factions that are vying for popularity in these events. It's what we call a decentralized event, which is there's really no one single person we can put our finger on, like with scraping or cruising. They have event coordinators that we can reach out and touch and get some information from. There's nothing like that for spring break. So we're doing the best that we can by grappling with numbers of hotel rentals, Airbnbs, those sorts of things. We've committed the entirety of our resources to making sure that everybody stays safe and that we keep traffic at least moving. We are looking at, however, how we're going to best manage that based on the number that's coming in, and that those numbers are changing weekly. You know, Facebook and social media is telling us one day it'll be a lot of people. The next day it's telling us that more people will be coming in August. And so it's hard for us to get a handle on it. But we are drawing up plans to deal with a large crowd if it shows up and a smaller crowd if it shows up. And that plan includes making sure that the traffic continues to move throughout the event. It may not move as fast as we want it to at some times, but our goal is to keep it moving. And instead of me sitting up here talking about stuff you already know, does anybody have any questions about spring break? Yes, ma'am?
As a person who's lived here now, we had a disaster over there in 2017 specifically with no traffic control, no anything, and this quote unquote now April event is unofficial. So you guys have done a great job the last 2 years of blocking off our neighborhood, but the fear is that the Coliseum is not on the buy-in with this event, and we have not heard anything saying finalizing that Edgewater Mall is going to let people park there. So where they're going to go is in our streets and in our homes. And I want some solution for the neighbors in this specific area because we live directly dead center of the Coliseum and Edgewater Mall.
So the informal.
Could you get
Sorry.
closer to the
Yeah.
podium for the microphone?
Sure.
And repeat a little bit of the comment of the question.
So the question was essentially about traffic control and the neighborhoods and Edgewater Mall parking and so forth. Essentially, the sponsor, if you will, the informal sponsor of this event, he has put out several things like parking at the mall. There's been no approval by the mall to do that. He's done this in years past where one year he said that there was going to be a big breakfast on the beach. A bunch of people showed up. Of course, there was no breakfast. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with. So we have to include some of that in our plan, of course, to ensure that we can remain fluid. There was, I believe, part of the question was about the traffic on 90 and stuff. The same traffic plan with the cones and all that will be in effect.
Even on the April dates?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There's only one small deviation, and that's along Restaurant Row, which is between, we'll say, Treasure Bay and Rodenberg. So we're going to take those 2 lanes of traffic that's going eastbound, divert them to Restaurant Row, going eastbound, and then divert them back at Rodenberg. Some of that's going to help us with keeping the traffic flowing. Some of it's going to reduce manpower needed in that area, so we can put it out in the other places. And then the other part is we always get complaints from the businesses there about cars being able to get into their parking lots. Well, that's going to push every car directly by their parking lot. And then
So I think more what I was getting at is that in the last few years, and I want to take this off just so I can speak more clearly, you guys have had police cars that have come and sat at the beginning of
Right.
those 2 streets by the entrances to my subdivision. So now, is that going to happen? Because I'm looking for it. This crowd is crazy. We ended up with people literally sitting in those 3 streets for days, looking
Right.
for another way out off of Highway 90, parking where they don't belong, parking, literally blocking people's driveways. I mean, we don't want, I mean, I spent days cleaning up after 2017. I
Right.
don't want to have to do that. I have a fenced-in yard, the city doesn't clean my yard. So I'm just saying, it was a disaster, and I don't want to see it repeat of that.
right, and we're certainly making every attempt to address every issue as they come up. Our plan is to have manpower in force everywhere we can, and to ensure that the event goers are in the event area and not, where they shouldn't be. But there are still some details we're still trying to work out as the plan is being finalized.
Where are they going to park?
Sure.
That's the number one question, because Coliseum isn't part of this.
Absolutely, and that's a huge issue for us.
So into my neighborhood and all the neighborhoods that are along Beach, that's the
Yes, ma'am.
concern.
Yes, sir. That's definitely a huge issue for us because, usually at every event, the Coliseum takes a lot of that traffic for us. Well, in this event, we've had to make several adjustments because we won't have that, so.
So this is, I just want you guys to recognize what a concern it is, and I'm not just speaking for myself. Like, there's a whole street full of people on Beachview that I come, and I represent them as well as myself, and we don't want to go through this again. I mean, a lot of us have spent a lot of money on our properties, and 2017 was a great day when they actually took over somebody's front yard and did barbecues and destroyed our house, and I don't want to do that again.
I understand. And our main goal in every event is to certainly keep traffic moving, maintain the safety, and then ultimately maintain the convenience and the safety for our citizens. So,
I'm just making sure you're aware.
yes, ma'am.
Now, you know that big field up there, I just want to bring
Right.
try to rent that out. 'Cause see, that
As
comes in
far
my
as-
neighborhood.
I've been in touch with the 2 largest lots on 90 are the Shulu lot and
That's
Grandview.
our street.
Right, and Grandview. I'm in weekly contact with the managers of those properties. As we get closer to the event, I'll be in contact with them twice a week, seeing if they've had any inquiries or if anybody has actually laid money down on the lot, because we're always interested in who is it that's going to be doing this. And as of right now, neither of the managers of those lots have received inquiries into renting them or serious attempts to rent them. Once again, it's hard for us to say how many people are showing up, but it looks like the split between these 2 people it may be a boon for us, but we are planning on it not being. We are putting the things in place that we need to ensure that those types of things don't happen again.
The currently what we know is that they have, we'll say, 3 events planned. One of them happens to be in Gulfport, one of them happens to be at the clubs on Kybet, and the other one is on the beach area. We've been in contact with Sand Beach in the county, and as of right now, there's been no permits for that beach, the Sand Beach part. So until the promoter, if you will give us a better plan, Captain Dykes has two different plans, and both of them are fluid, so that we can adjust accordingly however we can to make sure that safety, traffic flow, and make sure that you and your homes are safe and as convenient as we can make you.
Yeah, but it makes you feel a little better because you're going to do the cone plan. Because then my second half of the question was, is if you're just going to be, it's unofficial, we don't know what it's going to be, and we're not putting on cones.
No, we're going to prepare just like we prepare for every event, because we honestly just don't know how it's going to play out. Hopefully, as we get closer, we'll get more of those details, but we're not going to be unprepared for it no matter what. So yeah.
Paul, can you keep us incommunicado about what's going on with that, just to keep us so that we know what's going on too as neighbors? How prepared we have to be? Because I can tell you, it means the difference about how I protect my home.
Of course.
Friday morning, everything will go out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, so that Friday morning, like normal, is when we'll be putting everything out. You'll see the barricades up and cones out and so forth. And as we need to, like I said, adjust or move things, we will. Yes, sir.
Hey, just to follow up on that question, I actually live in what I call ground zero, the area between Biloxi and Hall. In years past, we were issued neighborhood passes, and going from these back streets like Beachview, you can access the back parking lot of the Coliseum and take us out onto Beauport Road, so we get that north from there. Now, last year we didn't get the passes. Coliseum did not have the gates up when we got to the parking lot. I don't consider the Coliseum a great neighbor, to be honest with you, because there's a safety facility. They answer to Jackson, they don't care too much about what goes on in the city other than that. Having spoken to the Coliseum, is there a possibility that the gates would be open during these events?
Well, we're certainly going to talk with Matt McDonald about it to see if he'll help facilitate that. That weekend they have Disney on Ice, which should just be the south parking lot, so we should be good on the north. But that Friday, which again, normally the event starts Friday evening, but that Friday they have the COVID shot still going on, which uses those north gates. So I can tell you Friday, if we're able to get it done, it'll be Friday afternoon before that's open. As far as the passes, that's something that normally went.
We did that, excuse me, we probably did those passes for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't even think about it. We did the passes for about 4 or 5 years, and for the folks in the area, it just meant if you had one, you lived in the area, so a police officer could wave you through if an intersection was closed or something like that. Then we had residents who would give particularly because you had a couple of apartment complexes, Grandview being one, but some people would hand their passes to other folks because I'd leave them with the apartment managers and explain the purpose and everything. And then when they had people duplicating them, I'd always try and get, a hot pink color or something like that. So as the traps got a little more sophisticated, the mice got a bit smarter. All that said to say that Chief Miller, I think last year we didn't have him, and I think maybe the year before we didn't have him, but at some point Chief Miller said, look, this is causing us more headaches, it's creating more issues than it's resolving for us. So I said, okay, so we didn't put them out the last year, maybe 2 years, but that's why they were stopped. I worked with the police to see if that the west gate really for the Coliseum is going to be open. It opens onto Pine Grove, but it sounds like with the events that they have planned.
Well, they have one event that'll be on the south side, and then the COVID event, of course, is on that Friday. But I think it was 2017, going back to the past, just kind of address that a little bit. We had some problems. I want to say it was across the street from your house, just north, where the lady lived there, but she was letting all her friends come in and stuff like that. So that was some of the problems that was created by the pass. But if we can get some kind of convenient route, certainly we're going to try to make everything we can possible. And again, we're going to remain fluid. We're going to adjust throughout the event to make sure everything's done safely and you and your homes are safe. Yes, sir. Right.
They come to their flying, throwing the trash out, everything else. So if the promoter doesn't say, this is our schedule of events, just don't let them come. Because you have to be able to say your guys around everything that's going on. If they don't know what they're going to do, take them down the road.
Nah, and I agree with you. The problem.
Produce a plan, and y'all have enough police to protect everybody and to reassure the neighbors, and they need to go down the road.
And I agree with you, but the problem is, like, especially with an event like this with no promoter or no official promoter, we'll say, to tell people you just can't come, they're going to show up anyways.
I mean, for an event, you have to have, I imagine, permits, or have to, or you could at least get the ball rolling on large events that have a large amount of people. They have to have some kind of permit.
The overall event right now, there's no permit process. Different events, which is being worked on, but different events, if they set up a loud concert or something like that, of course you have noise ordinance permits. If they block out parts of the beach or have certain events on the beach, they have to have sand beach permits. So there is certain things that are permitted. But I want to go back to Big Lake and Old Bay and stuff like that. So this is kind of off topic a little bit, but it's in the same realm. So I know that's a big cut through coming off Pass Road, or Pops Ferry, I mean. Right now we're in the process of doing some studies to look at the signs and everything throughout all those neighborhoods that cut through, speed limits and everything else. So I know we've had a lot of complaints about speeding through those areas, and we are working on that. Yes, sir. Yeah, you're right.
And I've talked to Paul, I sent him an email to get one of these speed tables to divert the traffic back somewhere else. We don't need it.
Right. So.
Seriously, I've emailed Craig Ross, I've emailed Paul, I've emailed the chief, trying to get some motorcycle units, like when I first moved here in 2002. Come over there and tag a few of them, and this is just not with these events, it's every day.
So as far as the motor units or traffic units, patrol units, whoever it is, we'll get those complaints and we do send them out in those areas. That we have a traffic committee that just started back up again, that does the signs, the traffic tables, evaluates all that stuff. We just had that first meeting last week, and our next meeting is in the beginning of third week of April. And but Craig Ross, if you email him, if you speed limit sign goes from 15 to 25 or whatever we need, child at play, whatever it is, you email him, he's keeping a list and he's bringing those to the meeting. And then we look at each one of them and we make our recommendations. Some of them we have to go do studies on, like this Old Bay part, we have to do a little study on, and then we bring it back, we make recommendations and get the appropriate signage put up.
I've even emailed Ben Warren on the school buses making the corner at Big Lake and Biloxi. Don't even stop.
Okay.
And I've got video. I sit out there at 6:20 in the morning in 7, and they didn't put that going on the news. But that right out the street right there, and I know it's kind of off topic from the other events.
Sure.
But we need something to be done.
Absolutely. We'll get we can get some radar set out there, and then.
They've had cars set down here in the Octane.
Yep.
And they'll tag a few of them. And me and my other neighbor, before she passed, we sit out there on the front porch. And we just sit there and have a good time watching you guys taking down. We enjoy it. There's like our live version of college.
We'll get some more units out there to run radar and stuff, And then in the meantime, and then with the traffic committee, if you don't mind emailing some of your concerns to Craig, and then he'll bring them to the committee, and then we can do the studies. But in some neighborhoods, you go through and, excuse me, on this street it'll be 15, on this street it'll be 25. So there's like no consistency in the signs. So that's what we're trying to do is get that back to more consistent in placement and proper placement so that they'll have some effect on the traffic.
Speaking to your question about people driving through the neighborhood for these events, unfortunately for everybody on the planet, Google Maps came along. So whenever I get into a traffic jam, I just ask Google where to turn, and even if I'm not familiar with the city, it will take me through the route that's open. Unfortunately, and law enforcement have had to learn this the hard way, unfortunately it takes them through residential neighborhoods. So we have had to broaden our view on how we manage traffic during these events, but understand that we have broadened our view, and we are, as we see these things arise, Harrison County lets us use their helicopter. We get a view from up there. We can take a look and see where the traffic is not traditionally, but we're seeing it, and move assets to that area to either block it off or to reroute the people.
I wish y'all would block it off. I didn't want the car out on the street to make it slow down. I really did.
Yes, sir. I understand your concerns. I certainly do.
When she walks her dogs, or I walk my dogs, I don't need somebody trying to run over.
Yes, sir. There was another question?
No, I was just going to make a comment.
Oh.
You guys are pretty effective there. Because I went down through Halifax and I went 20 on that. One of you guys stopped me. That guy saw the best. I give you a warning. It works. You guys are doing a good job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Seeing you introduce the whole traffic thing, we've been asking for how long now, Paul? They actually even put in stop signs in our neighborhood. I mean, I'm not saying a few stop signs, like 15 or 20 stop signs, and they just race through there. I mean, I've offered many times, you guys can come down, you can watch my camera, and you can see the 400 people a day running those stop signs through Pineville Avenue. They do not slow down at all. They don't stop for any of the stop signs.
You talking about?
They're going 50 miles an hour.
You talking about the three-way, or, yeah, the three-way?
Like Beacon, yeah,
Right.
Beachview and Pine Grove, and they've added stop signs to all of them. But especially that one coming in that's just before the gate of the RV park, it's kind of in an odd spot because it's before the side street. Nobody pays.
You talking about the stop signs on an odd spot? Yeah,
Yeah.
right behind the lot,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And of course, you know, the one that faces this way is kind of a little further down because it's right outside my lot.
Unfortunately, what we find, ma'am, is that the people that run stop signs in neighborhoods
No.
aren't from out of town because they stop at stop signs.
No, I can tell you right now, they are. They all come from that neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am, and we
They're not from our neighborhood.
we understand that, and
Start
we-
giving out tickets, boys.
yes, ma'am.
Well, we'll look at some traffic enforcement out there as well as look at that sign to see if it could be placed in a different spot.
Since this has been going on for 2 years, I mean, like, 3 years ago, I think they had a radar thing up there. That data got lost over time. They never figured it out. We were promised we'd get another one to start tracking people. That didn't happen. So it's still an issue. When he introduced it, I was gonna keep my mouth shut and just be happy with what I got answered. But I really don't, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but this has been going on for a long time.
Sure.
And
Yes,
what
ma'am.
mainly is the time they come through. You gotta go to work, you gotta come home at a certain time of the day, and then other times you don't have traffic. But certain times of the day is like that.
Well, what are the hours that are
Early
normal?
in the morning,
So like 6 to 8, lunchtime, and
Lunchtime is
and
huge.
then in the evening.
3 to 5.
Yeah, so they, a lot, now they figured out, like, the people that live in those apartments over there, they figured out if they come in Pine Grove and make the right at Beachview, they can go all the way down to the apartment entrance with no stop signs. So they go even faster. So, yeah, I mean, you know, they figured out, there's, like, if you came in Pine Grove, there's 1, 2, and 1 in Deming, and then 1 before Mercury Lane, right at Mercury Lane. So there's 3 there, which is Pine Grove, but they can avoid all that by going right on Beachview and whipping down the street.
And that street's narrow.
Yeah, well, there's no sign.
And I will make this observation. We're just in Ward 5, but I hear similar stories from residents and from other council members. It's particularly in neighborhoods, and it's just people who want to get from point A to point B faster. And that's all it is. Anyway, I'm scared to ask, is there anything else?
Well, I do have a question.
Go ahead, Rita.
I want to ask about the fence permit you have to get. If you want to repair your piece of your fence that got blown over.
Sure.
When's the latest date you can get the permit that's free?
You know, Jerry Creel, who was here earlier, could tell you, but he's left. It's either going to be April 1st or April 30th. I remember, it's rattling around that it ends in April. I remember that. I want to say it's the 1st of April, but I can give you that number to community development. It's, if you want to write it down, it's 435. 435-6280.
What was her question?
Her question was, after Hurricane Zeta, the city waived building permits, and she's got a fence she needs to replaced or repaired or whatever. So you still have to get a permit, but there's no charge. You've got to do that, I think, by.
Where I'm talking about is in the meeting here. That got off the fence that year at Edgewater on Ness Road.
That's.
That is the ugliest. I don't know who put it up, but it's terrible. That's not big size.
No, that's. I want to say that the Community Development and Code Enforcement is following up because I don't think it complies with the code. But I don't know all the details, but I think I'm safe saying that. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
That House Ferry extension, is the area that's going to be done first just past Road, or is it going to be all the way up to the bridge?
No, it's just going to be from Pass Road south to Highway 90 to the beach. The last figure the last figure I saw for the bridge, which would be, that involves widening it where Atkinson and Old Bay come into Pops Ferry. You're talking about moving, I think, like to 4 lanes at that point, and up and over to the other side, and widening Pops Ferry to 4 or 5 lanes rather than the 3 where it narrows, and that ticket on that was like $200 million. But it's not going to come from the residents of Ward 5, all $200 million. I'm kidding. No, yeah, but federal funds, and this is a project that's been talked about when I was in the 3rd grade with Hare. That's how long it's been. So, any other questions? Comments? Yes.
Maybe you can tell me, I was told by an officer a while back, there are 3 officers that work between White Avenue and the Beans. Is that true? And do y'all have any plans to add more officers in this area?
I have. We're going to add 100, but no. Yeah, we'd love to add them. So the way the beats work, you have 3 beats in the east Biloxi, which is White to the bridge. You have 3 beats west of the bridge, and then you got 3 beats up north. But yeah, you put one officer per beat. But what we also have, we have additional officers. There's about 13 per shift, which gives us by the time you fill all the beats, you put somebody in booking, that gives us an additional 3 officers. So what those officers do, we do what's called problem-oriented policing, and they'll go out if the burglaries, they'll say, is happening in your neighborhood, they'll target that. So yes, some days there are additional officers in the west. Some days during the day, because we have floater officers too, and then you have supervisors as well, there'll be 4 or 5 in the west. And then sometimes there's only the 3 in the west. So I know it doesn't really answer your question, and I'd love to see additional officers, so you can get them for us. Yes, sir.
Penny Boy and coming out the big way. And I would pick up trash on the street. And I found shank, I found needles, I found guns behind the center stage, not to mention all the spray paint that's popping up on the back of the Hobby Lobby, which I told the manager over there, I'll paint it myself, I just want that stuff gone.
Yes, sir.
Because now you're inviting the wrong element over here. You know, so with those things going on, I'm hoping that you guys will put some more officers at night. And not just that, I run those off out of the loading dock out there behind Hobby Lobby. They have 2 mattresses where they go out there, and I run one off behind the dentist office right here on the side of Patty Boy. And she told me I could, and he's throwing bags of feces over there in that vacant lot. I mean, so we got a problem going on, which, I mean, I know y'all are trying to get homes and everything, but it is killing our property value. The tourists right here on the beach are not going to come back. When they see that in a tourist area, if you go to Daphne and Farrell, you're not going to see anything. All the trash on the street, you're not going to see any of that. So, I mean, hopefully that the council will start addressing a lot of these issues, including adding more officers to, you know, kind of get this element out of here.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we have the homeless team basically, and they try to target as many as they can. And it's about resolving their issue. We could take them to jail all day long, and it's just a revolving door. But if we can resolve their issue, whether it's, of course, a job, housing, mental health help, getting reconnected with the family, that's what we try to do. Because in the long run, that's going to hopefully take them off the street and, like I said, resolve their issue and become a productive member of society at that point. Yep. We do. We make. I don't know if it's on here or not.
I mean, to be honest, when Paul was coming through the other week, there's a girl that sits out there right in front of her garage. She didn't get much money. And she's constantly selling drugs right outside. But she's constantly selling drugs right outside in her yard. And I've watched people go up to the window, knock, she'll pass something through. There's cars that I've got tag numbers for that come up, pick her up, drop her off 2 minutes later. I know what's going on.
Well, I'm going to give you my card, my number, and if you have any of that information, we'd certainly get it from you. Okay. We'll certainly get that information from you, and then address it. But not only do we have the patrol, I talked about the 3, but then you have like narcotics, you have investigations and so forth. But when we have the additional officers, you know, whether it's 2, 3 that day or whatever it is, we have a detail going, so officers come in on their off time. We certainly try to take like the problems you're talking about, and we put those resources to that problem. And then, you know, it's just like a fire, like a fire department. You squash the fire, then you move to the next one, squash the fire. Just like burglaries. If you have a burglar that we catch, you know, more than likely he's responsible for not just that one, but probably 10 others. So what we'll see is we'll see several burglaries in an area. We catch that guy, and then all of a sudden we have a sporadic burglary here and there. But that's what we try to do, is target those issues that arise, or you know, from complaints like people like yourself, or things that we find.
I appreciate everything you guys do. I call y'all every time, you know, something goes wrong over there.
Well, we appreciate the support, and like I said, I'll give you my number, and just give me that information. We'll work on it. All right.
Any other questions? I'm trying to get you out of here before the weather rolls in. It's 5 after 7. There being no questions, and I'll hang around for a few minutes if you want to speak about something in particular. But thank you for coming tonight. Drive safely on the way home. Get there before the bad weather rolls in. Thank you.
Thank you, Major. Appreciate it.